So there I was, Commander Zorn Vex of the Galactic Dominion fleet, decorated war veteran with 17 planetary conquests to my name, witnessing the most absurd display in my 300 cycles of service. Commander, the human juvenile, seems to be disregarding your challenge, reported Lieutenant Craw, his 4 eyes blinking in perplexity. I clicked my mandibles in irritation. I can see that, Lieutenant. I am standing right here. The human, and a lanky specimen with disheveled brown hair and a curious scattering of small spots across its face, continued operating a small rectangular device clutched in its hands, thumbs darting with astonishing speed. Its auditory openings were sealed with tiny white objects, apparently severing all awareness of our presence. Perhaps our universal translator has developed a fault, Craw suggested. Science Officer Pella, the sole female on our reconnaissance crew, adjusted the controls on her wrist console, the violet hue of her skin deepening as she worked. The planet's atmospheric makeup frequently disrupts our instruments, she explained. I growled, a sound that had once made even the fiercest Drazak Horde warriors soak their battle skirts in fear. The translator is functioning perfectly. The human is simply discourteous. This was not how first contact was meant to unfold. After decades of covert surveillance, the Dominion had determined that Earth was prepared for its formal welcome into the Galactic Order. And by prepared, of course, I meant ripe for annexation. Our intelligence indicated that humans were physically outmatched by nearly every sentient race known, soft-skinned, sluggish, weakly muscled beings with laughably poor sensory range, the perfect addition to our expanding empire. My assignment was straightforward: demonstrate, prove Dominion supremacy by engaging and defeating their most capable warrior in single combat. Unfortunately, there had been a minor miscalculation. Commander, Craw murmured uneasily, are you entirely certain this is their champion? Our reports indicated their greatest fighters could be found at these, what were they called? Recreational facilities, I supplied, scanning the open green expanse where clusters of humans busied themselves with a variety of meaningless diversions. And yes, according to our intelligence, human adolescents embody the species' peak physical prowess. What a laughable notion. I had chosen this specimen for its above-average height and the fact it lingered apart from the others. Ideal for a discreet display of Dominion dominance before revealing ourselves to their planetary rulers. Excuse me, I finally boomed, stepping squarely into the human's line of sight. I am Commander Zorn Vex of the Galactic Dominion. I challenge you, Earth's greatest warrior, to battle for the destiny of your planet. The human glanced up, blinked twice, and tugged one of the small white devices from its ear. Sorry, what? It asked, eyes widening slightly as they took in my imposing presence. At last, a glimmer of proper fear, I remarked. I repeated myself, slower this time, for the seemingly sluggish-minded being. I challenge you to combat, for the fate of your world. The human male, at least that was my assumption given my limited grasp of their sexual dimorphism, looked from me to my trio of officers. Cool outfits, he said at last. You guys from that sci-fi convention downtown? The prosthetics are amazing. Craw inclined toward me. Commander, I believe the human believes we are other humans in ornamental coverings. I am well aware of his assumption, I snapped. The situation was rapidly descending into farce. I rose to my full height, nearly 3 meters, letting my dorsal spines flare to their maximum span. Human, I am not wearing a disguise. I am an extraterrestrial life form from beyond your star system. My kind intends to subjugate your planet. But under galactic protocol, we must first defeat your champion in honorable combat. The human's face shifted from puzzlement to amusement. He tucked the small device into the fabric sheath, covering his lower body and crossed his arms. Sure, he said, a peculiar curl tugging at his lips. And I'm Batman. Look, I'm waiting for my friends, so unless you're buying me a soda for humoring this, I'll pass. My patience was burning away like frost on a sunlit asteroid. Without another word, I activated my plasma blade, the violet energy arc humming from my wrist gauntlet. Oh, the human said, his expression shifting. That's actually some impressive tech. This is not technology from your primitive world, I snarled. It is a Class 4 plasma disruptor capable of slicing through reinforced starship hulls. Now, do you accept my challenge, or does your species yield immediately? To my surprise, the human did not bolt in terror. Instead, he pushed himself away from the tree, standing straighter than before. I'm guessing you're not going to quit bothering me until I play along. He sighed. Fine. I accept your challenge, alien guy. I'm Jake, by the way. Jake Mercer. Your designation is irrelevant, I replied coldly. The combat rules are simple. First to yield is defeated. If you win, the Dominion will delay Earth's conquest for one full solar cycle. If I win, your planet becomes ours immediately. Jake Mercer scratched his head. Yeah, sure, fine. What exactly are we talking here? Arm wrestling? Video game match? Please tell me you're not serious about swinging that laser sword at me. We engage in unarmed combat, I declared, deactivating the blade as a gesture of honor. Only physical skill will determine which species is superior. Jake's brows furrowed in genuine confusion. You want to fight me? Physically? Dude, no offense, but you're like twice my size. With claws. And those spiky, whatever things on your back. I allowed what humans might call a smile, though on my face it was more a predator's snarl. Your observation is correct. I possess greater strength, reflexes, exoskeletal armor, and natural weapons. Surrender would be the rational choice. 2. My astonishment, Jake Mercer burst out laughing, a true hearty laugh that drew curious looks from nearby humans. Man, you're really into this whole act, he said. All right, I accept your challenge, Commander Zorp. Zorn, I corrected sharply. Commander Zorn Vex. Right, sorry, Jake said, sounding anything but apologetic. So, how does this work? Do we just start throwing punches out? Here in the park? Lieutenant Craw stepped forward. Commander, perhaps we should move to a more secluded spot, Lieutenant Craw suggested. Our cloaking field won't conceal physical contact with the humans. Others might see. A fair point. Our orders stressed minimal exposure to the public until the challenge concluded. There, I said, nodding toward a wooded patch at the edge of the park. We'll settle the matter away from prying eyes. Jake shrugged. Sure, lead the way to the creepy woods, mysterious alien dude. Definitely not how horror flicks start or anything. As we moved, Science Officer Pella stepped closer to Jake, her scanner quietly buzzing. Fascinating, she whispered. Commander, the human's nervous system shows unusual electrical activity. Their neural signals are astonishingly fast for an organic life form. Does that affect the fight? I asked, growing impatient. Potentially, Pella answered. It might mean his reflexes are quicker than our data predicted. I brushed off her observation with a sharp flick of my claw. Irrelevant. My reflexes remain at least 3 times faster than any organic species we've faced. Jake watched us with a mix of curiosity and amusement. So you aliens are really serious about this, huh? What's the point? Some social media stunt? A science experiment on how gullible humans are? Silence, human, I ordered. Conserve your energy for the fight. You'll need every edge you can get. We arrived at a small clearing encircled by earth trees, secluded yet spacious enough for movement. We will start on Lieutenant Craw's signal, I declared, positioning myself in the center. The match ends when one competitor either verbally surrenders or is rendered unconscious. Jake faced me, still amused but with a subtle tension in his posture. You're not really going to hurt me, right? Because that's assault. And I'm pretty sure that's illegal even if you say you're from another planet. I will strive to defeat you quickly and efficiently, I replied, settling into my combat stance. Inflicting unnecessary harm would be unwise. Great, Jake muttered. Super comforting. Lieutenant Craw lifted his upper right limb. Combatants ready, begin. I didn't move immediately, curious to see what strategy this human might employ. To my surprise, Jake simply stood there, hands partially raised in what appeared to be a defensive posture. "Aren't you going to attack?" he asked after several seconds. "I was extending you the courtesy of first strike," I replied. "The tradition among many galactic civilizations when facing a clearly outmatched opponent." Jake rolled his eyes. Wow, arrogant much. Fine. What happened next was unexpected. The human didn't charge or attempt acclamcy strike as our combat simulations had predicted. Instead, he began circling slowly, maintaining distance while studying my form with surprising intensity. "You know," he said conversationally, "if you are really an alien, you probably don't know much about human martial arts, right?" I followed his movement, keeping my front facing him. "We have studied your primitive combat techniques extensively. Boxing, wrestling, karate, inefficient systems developed to compensate for your species' natural weaknesses." Jake nodded thoughtfully. Cool. So you probably know about this then." The human suddenly dropped low and swept his leg in an arc that, had I been ignorant of the technique, might have caught me off guard. But I simply leapt over the pitiful attempt, using my superior leg muscles to propel myself 2 meters into the air. Predictable expression on his face. "You seem to be slowing down a bit." I was not tiring. Dominion warriors could maintain peak combat performance for hours, but I was recalculating. This human teenager was not following any of our predicted combat patterns. "Commander," Kraz urged, "perhaps the plasma blade would expedite." "No," I snapped. "The protocol demands unarmed combat. I will not violate galactic law." Jake used my momentary distraction to execute a maneuver I had never witnessed. Slipping past my guard, grasping my primary right arm in the end, and applying leverage in adirection. My joint was not designed to bend. Pain. Actual pain. With a roar, I broke his hold using my superior strength. But the message had been sent. The human had found a vulnerability. "That's your first real expression," Jake noted, circling again. "Guess those prosthetics are pretty advanced after all. I needed to end this." Now, drawing on rarely used reserves, I activated my secondary adrenal gland, flooding my system with combat hormones. My perception sharpened, time seemed to slow, and I launched into the 7th form of Dominion Elite Combat, a sequence so fast and complex it had never been successfully countered. Time slowed. My limbs moved with precision honed through centuries of combat training. The 7th form was our most closely guarded martial secret, a sequence of 37 strikes delivered in under 4 seconds. But targeting every vital point on a bipedal organism, Jake's surprising skills simultaneously. No being had ever survived it, let alone countered it. The human should have crumpled instantly. Instead, something impossible happened. Jake Mercer adapted, his body twisted in ways our physiological studies had not predicted possible for his species. Where my primary strike should have connected with his central nerve cluster, he contracted abdominal muscles and shifted his torso mere centimeters enough that my blow glanced off rather than incapacitated. When my secondary limbs targeted his lower extremities, he somehow launched himself into a backwards rotation that our combat simulations had never projected as a viable defensive maneuver. Commander Science Officer Pella's voice cut through. "My combat focus is neural patterns. They are synchronizing with your attack rhythm." I couldn't process her words. All my concentration was on the execution of the form, on the increasingly frustrating reality that none of my strikes were landing with full effectiveness. The human moved as though he could anticipate each attack milliseconds before I delivered it. The final sequence of the 7th form involved a sweeping leg strike combined with an overhead claw strike, a combination designed to force an opponent to either take the leg sweep or the more damaging upper body blow. I executed it flawlessly. Jake Mercer did neither of the expected responses. Instead, he dropped flat to the ground, allowing both strikes to pass harmlessly above him, then rolled forward between my widely planted legs and somehow ended up behind me. Before I could pivot, I felt a sharp impact at the base of my spinal ridge, precisely at the junction where our exoskeleton is naturally thinnest to allow for flexibility. My legs buckled. Well, sorry. Did that actually hurt? Jake's voice sounded, genuinely concerned as I crashed to my knees. I figured with all that armor you were wearing, it wouldn't be a problem. This is not armor, I roared, struggling to stand as my lower nervous system temporarily short-circuited from the precisely placed blow. This is my body. For the first time, uncertainty flickered across the human's face. Wait, seriously? Lieutenant. Craw rushed forward, plasma rifle raised. Commander, are you injured? Should I terminate the human? Stand down, I ordered, finally regaining control of my limbs. The combat protocol must be honored. I rose to my full height again, reassessing everything about this situation. The human hadn't just gotten lucky. He had somehow identified a physiological weakness that wasn't even visible to the naked eye. How did you know to strike there? I demanded. Jake shrugged, that infuriating casualness returning. I didn't really just notice you had less plating there when you moved. Basic biology joints need flexibility. Flexibility means less protection. Officer Pella approached, scanner humming. Commander, request permission to share my analysis. Speak I, grunted, keeping my eyes fixed on the human. The human's neural architecture is extraordinary, she said, her voice carrying that tone scientists reserve for unexpected discoveries. While individually their neurons transmit more slowly than ours, their network possesses unprecedented adaptive plasticity. Each exchange with you creates new pathways, optimizing their response to your specific combat patterns. Meaning what exactly? I growled. Meaning, she continued, violet skin flushing with excitement. The longer you fight, the better they get at fighting you specifically. It's a learning rate I have never observed in any species. Jake was listening to this exchange with growing interest. So you guys really are aliens. This isn't some elaborate prank. Of course we are aliens, I snapped. I have been telling you that since we began. Yeah, but Jake gestured vaguely at our surroundings. This is Milwaukee. Aliens don't invade Milwaukee. They invade New York or Tokyo or something. I clicked my mandibles. In frustration, we are not invading, at least not yet. We are following proper galactic protocol by challenging your champion first. And you think I'm Earth's champion? Jake asked incredulously. Dude, I'm failing gym class. Coach Peterson makes me run extra laps because I can't climb the rope. This information contradicted everything our intelligence had gathered, but our observations indicated human adolescents represent peak physical development of your species. Jake laughed so hard he had to brace his hands on his knees. No way. I mean, teenagers might recover faster or whatever, but we are nowhere near peak anything. You should see, actual athletes or military people. A disturbing thought began forming in my mind. If this struggling gym class human could effectively counter our most elite combat techniques, Commander Kralian Defeat whispered urgently, perhaps we should reconsider the invasion timeline. Isolenced him with a glare, though privately I was, beginning to share his concern. The combat is not concluded, I declared, attempting to regain control of the situation. Prepare to continue. Jake straightened up, wiping tears of laughter from his eyes. Sure, but quick question first. If you really are aliens, can you prove it? Do something alien? Why that couldn't be faked? This request was reasonable enough. I activated my bioluminescent display glands, causing patterns of blue light to ripple across my exoskeleton in sequences impossible to replicate with Earth technology. Jake's eyes widened. Okay, that's legitimately cool. Now, I said, deactivating. The display, we continue, but the human held up a hand. Wait, if you are really planning to invade Earth based on beating me in a fight, I think you should know something important. What? I demanded suspiciously. I take karate twice a week, Jake said. I have since I was 10. Not because I'm some chosen warrior or whatever, but because my mom thought it would help with my ADHD. This term was unfamiliar. ADHD, Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder. Officer Pella supplied immediately. A human. Neurological variation characterized by differences in executive function. And oh, her eyes widened in sudden understanding. Commander, this may explain the unusual neural patterns. ADHD humans have been documented to possess faster reaction times and heightened pattern recognition in certain contexts. Jake pointed at Pella what she said. Plus, I play a lot of fighting games like competitive level. My reaction time's been tested at around 150 milliseconds, which is apparently pretty good. I stood there processing this information. A neurological variation video simulations. These were the secrets to countering techniques that had conquered 17 worlds. This changes nothing, I declared, though with less conviction than before. The challenge continues. Jake sighed. Fine, but I'm telling you, if your whole invasion plan is based on beating random humans in fights, you might want to rethink it. We resumed our combat positions. This time, I approached more cautiously, abandoning the predictable patterns the human had already adapted to. I would be unpredictable, chaotic, impossible to anticipate. But as our exchange resumed, a troubling pattern emerged. No matter how I varied my attacks, Jake seemed to adjust almost instantly. When I attacked high, he went low. When I struck fast, he evaded rather than blocked. When I employed complex fights, he somehow ignored the false movements and responded only to genuine threats. Your species relies too heavily on planned sequences, Jake commented during a momentary separation. Real fights are chaotic. You have to improvise. Dominion warriors do not improvise, I replied stiffly. Our combat systems are mathematically optimized for maximum efficiency. Yeah, that's your problem, Jake said, circling again. You are fighting like a computer program, predictable once I figure out the patterns. This observation was so offensive. I momentarily lost focus, lunging forward with less precision than my training demanded. Jake easily sidestepped, then executed a simple maneuver that somehow used my own momentum to send me stumbling forward. As I regained my balance, a terrible realization dawned. The human was correct. Our entire combat philosophy was based on perfected sequences, optimized patterns developed over millennia. Against most species, this approach was devastatingly effective, but against beings with this remarkable neural adaptability. I think I get it now, Jake said, interrupting my thoughts. You guys evolved from something like insects, right? I've mined collective thinking, pre-programmed behaviors. We